Have you written a lot of songs in your life?
A lot, a lot.
All for yourself?
You want some? I have
No,
some.
no, no, no. Have you sold them successfully?
Yeah.
What was the first band you ever worked with?
Rebecca and the Sunnybrook Farmers.
I heard about that band. Was this a 60s band or something I heard where everybody, half the band was tambourines or something?
Exactly. If you wanted to join the group, it was okay.
There was no pay. How long did that last?
About 5, 6 years.
It's weird.
I think he's a freak, actually.
Joy to the world,
Yeah, that's Brother Nathaniel.
the Lord is
Kind of
come.
an ex-monk or something.
Let every home. Well, we're having church. I started coming here last year. Nobody knew me, no one ever saw me before. And wonders of his love.
You simpleton. The Old Testament describes many instances of God appearing in limited forms as theophanies. In one instance, God appeared to Abraham and even ate with him, having the appearance of a limited mouth.
Gosh, it's been running through a forest green, running along this path, moving along so fast.
Hello again, welcome back. Psychedelic here. And today we got another Acid Archive Diaries. This is number 38. And just as a reminder, this is a thread started by Dom at Seeking a Thread. And if you search out the playlist, I'm sure whoever stumbles across this video, be sure to share that and check that out. We're referencing the Acid Archive book. This is the second edition. Arguably, well, almost by everybody, definitively, the ultimate guidebook for, sort of those deep dive U.S. titles, largely private press, but also major label LPs that just kind of sunk underneath the radar. You won't find stuff like the Electric Prunes or Grateful Dead in here. Even some of those like second tier deep cut kind of bands. I think the Elevators makes it on here, but other than that, it's a little more off the beaten path kind of records, which is right up my alley. And it was like this book is almost designed just for me. And it was definitely a guidebook early on. It just took me a long time to get the second edition, but I finally have it. But the first edition is still a keeper. I think it may omit a few titles that aren't featured in here and feature a few other different, some original text that is missing from this one. But we'll be referencing the second edition from this point on, I think. And today we're talking about a spicy title. This is one where obviously it's not going to fit everybody's frame of mindset where they want to go as far as the psychedelic movement. But it's become sort of one of those cult favorites. And I certainly jumped on board when I was discovering stuff. And like I said, it's just got so much diversity packed into one LP that you may just end up liking one or two tracks, but and there's a bit of relationship with me with this record too, where there's maybe a couple moments in here that are very unlistenable, but the rest I really enjoy. And today we're talking about Rebecca and the Sunnybrook Farmers. This is the album here, Birth, on Musicore. This is their one lone wolf LP here. In Musicore, it's got some association with Columbia Records. I think there may have been a Columbia pressing in Canada, maybe. I know that was the case with Federal Duck on Musicore. So yeah, where do I begin with this? This group formed out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Played around all different circuits throughout like 5 years or so. And the name, Rebecca and the Sunnybrook Farmers, refers to Rebecca of Sunnybrook, that Shirley Temple film. I actually knew of that film before this band ever popped up on my radar. And also, take a look at some of those names on the back, like Eileen Rappaport, Kiki, Ernie Emirta, Eileen Novog. Got some really silly names, but apparently that's their real names for most of them. For the longest time, I thought it was just pseudonyms, because I know Eileen would later become Lauren Wood, but I guess that was just her stage name. I thought for the longest time that was like her birth name, and this was sort of like her taking the back seat, not using her real name. And Mickey Kapner. But Lauren Wood, I guess I can talk about her at the end, but we'll talk about this record. So this came out like 69, I think, 68. I actually forget the year. It might be 69. Taking a look at that cover there. They got their own personal egg illustrated on there. This is them all grown up. It's kind of interesting. So kind of looks like it could give you some like barnyard folky kind of vibes maybe, and that certainly is the appeal on here on some tracks. But like I said in the beginning, it's kind of a hodgepodge. It's really a ramshackle mix of both folk, but then they do some classical elements with bringing the violin into here. We have a viola player and harpsichord done by Eileen. And you have some sitar moments. There's one track that definitely has some sitar moments. Everybody does their share of vocal harmonies in the background. And it seems like every other track I tend to like. At least starting out, at least. So the opening track, Oh Gosh, in parentheses, Running Through the Forest. I got a sample of that here in the beginning. I think it's Mickey doing lead vocals on this one. He has a very sort of Bob Dylan-y, kind of lispy approach to it. Almost sounds very like he's kind of schizoid or something. Very paranoid, running through the forest. It's kind of got this really dramatic, sort of semi-progressive kind of movement to it. It's a great track that starts it off, kind of kicks it off into like this weird like world of, like I said, all those elements. You got pop, folk, and sort of those Baroque pop touches. With the inclusion of the viola. And then we got the next track, Two Blind Sisters. It's got this kind of slow, kind of jazzy shuffle, as well as shared with the track Love, which is later on side 1. And that track for me, I think I get where they're trying to go with the track Love. It doesn't sound like love to me. It sounds like something else is going on in that track with her vocals. She starts like screeching towards the end of the track. I think it's Kiki that does the vocals, which her real name is Alexandria, or Alexander. Yeah, and she just like lets loose and kind of does this whole Janis Joplin act, where it gets very over the top, very quickly. And to me, it's just almost unlistenable. I always skip that track, but I listened to it upon doing this review. And yeah, it doesn't do it for me, but it's got that kind of gloomy organ sound. Not only on that track, but on most of these tracks here, you got that kind of hazy organ sound. And one of my favorite tracks, maybe the top 3 tracks on here, David and Sally, has a little bit of a, down-to-earth kind of traditional, taking your girl out to a dance or whatever, lyrically. But there might be some like low-key religious tones or religious recallings in some of these lyrics as well. And I love where that track goes. It's got some interesting arrangements, and the more you listen to it, it kind of sinks into where they're going. Shared vocals between Eileen and Mickey on that track. And then I wonder if Richard Morton Jack takes his title, Endless Trip, from this record. I'd like to think so. I'm not for sure though. Ends on a track called Endless Trip, which is also a pretty good highlight. Got some mid-tempo, jangly guitar work. Very decent harmonies. It's probably the most straightforward track thus far on the album. And then once we get to side 2, it gets a little interesting, at least one of my more favorite parts. A very strange track called Better Dead Than Red, almost lasting like 6 minutes opening up. And you have like these, Eileen's doing the lead vocals on that track. There's a little bit of like jazzy undertones working on the rhythm section. I really love the bass work on this as well, I should point out, by Ernie. I love his bass work on this one. It really sticks out. But there's like this whole midsection on the Better Dead track where it gets really quiet in the mix, and then it kind of ramps up with the slide guitar with some like warfare happening in the background, and then it reprises to where the track began, and then it just ends with this sort of like backwards loop. It's kind of like a subtle, it's like probably the most psychedelic track on here as far as like the tape manipulation, sound effect work going on here. Then the next track, all these ties sort of fitting in line with like Endless Trip, where it's, you know, the most catchy track, maybe the most commercially oriented track, and very tightly performed. But yeah, it ends really short. It's got a great hook to it, and some good organ moves on that one in particular. And then probably my favorite track, and I think this is going to be maybe the fan favorite for most, I'm not sure, but it's What Do You Think of the War? And I featured that on a Psychedelic Trip long ago. It's got the sitar in that track. It's kind of sort of buried in the mix, but you can hear it. And it's sort of just this sort of like barnyard meets patriotic meets psych folk. But it's also got this kind of like, again, kind of buried in the mix, kind of fuzz guitar all throughout. And some funny commentary where things were at this time in the world. Then it opens up with that patriotic tune, Stars and Stripes Forever. And that kind of closes out on some violin, but it's like a violin take on that track. Yeah, I think it's one of the better highlights. What do you think of the war?
Mama goes gaga, daddy goes gaga, brother goes gaga, baby says, what do you think of the war?
Once it gets to that favorite track, I kind of start taking it off most of the time, but the track Mama and then Ghost, again, very short tracks. Doesn't leave on the strongest note, but still overall it still incorporates that kind of quirkiness, that sort of diversity that they throw into this brew of different sounds going on. You know, it's maybe the trippiness element, maybe the psychedelicness of it is not like overblown or in your face. It's a little bit underproduced, I would say, overall. So yeah, in that regard, it's not really up there with some of the heavyweights per se, and it doesn't necessarily rock out at all. So don't expect, you know, full blown, you know, Doors moves or you know, 13/4 elevator kind of sounds. I mean, this is very much a sort of a homespun, very subtle on the psychedelicness. Definitely an interesting listen. I think you should still investigate this and check it out on your own. Yeah, some weird things happening in Pittsburgh. That's for sure. So yeah, they must have toured, and I think I read online they toured with Blood, Sweat, and Tears, opened for Alice Cooper, amongst many other popular bands at that time, like during the early 70s. I don't think it's going to focus, is it? Maybe if I tap the camera. Not too much. It's on MusicCore though. Very clean copy here. Got this one a while back from friend Matt, who I think still watches these videos. David's Paid on Instagram. This also came with a lyric insert, as well as a photo on the back. I don't know if this came with only the promo copies. I read that somewhere where this image was only shown on like promotional copies, but this is a stock copy. But I know stock copies can have can indicate a promo sometimes. Radio stations will still take stock copies. But yeah, kind of cool photographs there. I think this is Lauren here on the end, Lauren Wood. I do believe that's Nikki Mickey Kapner, who were probably the two most notable names out of here. So Lauren Wood, she actually had a hit later on after one of her solo LPs in the early 80s called Fallen. Apparently it was a big hit because of the movie Pretty Woman. So you might recognize that track from Lauren Wood. And she started out in this band. And I feature her in the beginning of this video with Dick Clark. She was, touring with a few different backing bands at the time, and I think she also had like a duet pop song with Michael McDonald. So she definitely earned her rights, as a singer-songwriter. It sounds like she's written a lot of songs. So Mickey Kapner, I featured him in the beginning of this video as well. His brother Nathaniel, who was sort of semi-viral street evangelist that traveled from like Colorado to everywhere in the Midwest, I guess. And he would always post these different blogs and stuff about, just sort of political nonsense and just sort of like relating it to, sort of this like extreme Christianity narrative. Well, it's kind of interesting where he landed up. So he kind of became this sort of, born again Christian, and kind of made these like videos back in the day where they just went on these tangents. And ever since then, I can't find a whole lot of footage of him. I don't know if his videos got taken down or what, but it's kind of interesting how some of these people ended up. So I think this is him here on the back. I'm pretty confident in saying that. So I guess Eileen, Lauren Wood, and a couple other members here would later do like a couple albums on Warner Brothers, I believe. They're associated with that label, and they had like a couple soft rock LPs, sort of like in the mid 70s. I haven't listened to those, but it's the violinist, Eileen. I think that was who it is. Both Eileens, you could say. And I think it was Ernie as well. And then around this time, Eileen, Lauren Wood, she would coin the nickname Chunky later on in life, which is kind of funny to me. Sort of like in the mid 70s, during that time she was with this other formation of the trio that they were. So yeah, I don't know what else to say more about these guys. I guess they recorded this in New York City, like during a week, and it was just kind of wrapped up pretty quickly. I don't know. Must not have sold very well. And lately it's just become sort of like I said, kind of a cult classic in sort of the whole light of just strange things that strange hippies do. And this is certainly one of those LPs to expect listening to this. So yeah, a whole whirlwind of classical, sort of light Baroque pop touches, a lot of folkiness, a lot stripped down from here, psych pop. I mean, it's kind of really hard to categorize it into one subgenre because there's so much going on here. But yeah, let's take a look and see what the Acid Archives have to say about this. I peeked at it and it looked like there was a lot of slang going on. So let's see if I can read through this. So we got Rebecca and the Sunnybrook Farmers, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Well, they call it Rebirth, but it's actually Birth. Maybe they got that mixed up with the Children LP. Music Core gets the 2 rarity at this time. And I guess the only reissue at that time was the 2007 CD on Fallout. So let's read. And this is from Patrick Lemborg. This is an old school cult LP out of Pittsburgh that, in spite of all the recent interest in hippie freak music, still remains pretty much buried in the cult section. It probably deserves more attention, not to mention a legit reissue, as it is appealing late 60s head sounds with obvious signs of dropping out of straight society. The male vocalist goes for a sometimes unwanted Dylan Zappa sarcasm, while the female singers range from turned on purrs to amazing primal therapy, not unlike the weird shit pulled by Buffy St. Marie on her Illuminations LP, which has another good one. The band has a clubby, almost garagey sound, which adds to the crash pad feel, and there's unexpected and quite good use of violin throughout. Except for the vocalists, it sounds a bit like the non-orchestrated folk rock tracks on the Common People LP. Well-written songs with eclectic folk and jazz moves, plus a couple of acid freakouts. not to be confused with the zillions of late 60s femme vox hippie bandwagon jumpers. Rebirth deserves a place among true freaks, such as Fear itself and the United States of America. In fact, it's almost like a satire over weekend hippies at times. Well worth checking out, and some copies came with an insert, possibly promo only. Yeah, that's where I picked up on that, I think. Or where it mentioned about having the insert, possibly promos only, which may not be the case. So, and right above it is one of the strangest LPs I've ever heard, Kit Ream, All That I Am. Yes, look into that one. I don't own that one, but man, that's one of the strangest. Speaking of Outsider records, talked about that recently. Boy, is that one of them. So yeah, I think that's all we got to cover on here. It seems like the info during this time period when they recorded this is kind of scarce. It's kind of sparse. I can't seem to find a whole lot about it. It's great to know that Lauren Wood will later go on to better things after this, and I'm actually Facebook friends with her, funny enough. Just happened to find her on there one day talking about this group, and yeah, become online buddies. So yeah, Rebecca and the Sunnybrook Farmers, their album Birth. Let me know what you think of it if you've heard it, which I know some of you probably have. On that note, take care, have a good weekend, and we'll see you soon.